The room went quiet when Principal Winter stepped up. She didn't even try to hide the look on her face. She stared at Jack Bennett, then said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Sir, this school has standards. And frankly, showing up in a dirty work jacket doesn't exactly say responsible father." People laughed. One mom leaned over and whispered, "Does he even have a job? Or just sleep in his truck?" Jack didn't say a word. He sat tall, calm, but his hand never left his daughter's shoulder. He looked like someone they could ignore, until a man in uniform stood up from the back and changed everything. They judged him without knowing a thing. When the truth came out, it stunned them all. "Let us know. What would you say to Jack?" Jack Bennett wasn't the kind of man who attracted attention. At 35, he moved through life with quiet purpose, his faded jeans and simple button-down shirts revealing nothing of the life he once led. Each morning began the same, rising before the sun at 5 a.m., carefully preparing Emma's lunch, tucking a handwritten note between her sandwich and apple slices. "Be brave today, little soldier," he would write, or "Remember, kindness is your superpower." Small messages that carried the weight of both parents' love. Their apartment on the east side of Austin was modest but meticulously maintained. While other single parents might have surrendered to chaos, Jack's military precision remained ingrained. Clothes were folded with perfect corners. Dishes never lingered in the sink. Emma's artwork covered nearly every wall, bright splashes of color against the apartment's neutral tones. A fortress of normalcy he had built for her. The other parents at Westfield Academy whispered behind cupped hands whenever Jack arrived for school functions. He was handsome in a weathered way, with storm-gray eyes that seemed to notice everything while revealing nothing. The mothers speculated about his past. The fathers kept their distance, uncomfortable with his quiet competence. None of them knew about the dog tags he wore beneath his shirt, the ones he absently touched when stress tightened his shoulders. Nobody recognized the precise way he scanned every room upon entering, old habits that had kept him alive in another life. Only at home, when Emma climbed onto his lap with a book or a question about homework, did the tension in his face soften. For her, he was endless patience and gentle explanations. For everyone else, he remained a fortress, cordial but impenetrable. His bookshelf told the story he wouldn't share: military history, advanced engineering textbooks, field manuals with dog-eared corners. The life of a scholar soldier, now hidden behind the grease-stained hands of a mechanic. The night after the PTA meeting, Jack sat alone at the kitchen table, an old photo spread before him. The apartment was silent. Emma, finally asleep after crying herself into exhaustion. "Not having a mom makes you weird," the kids had told her that day. The principal's words had only confirmed what they already believed. Jack traced the outline of his wife's face in the photograph. Her army surgeon's uniform crisp, her smile radiant despite the Afghan dust coating everything in the frame. Captain Melissa Bennett had been brilliant, top of her class at medical school before choosing military service over lucrative practice. "People need me there," she'd explained simply. They had met during his second tour, when Ranger Staff Sergeant Jack Bennett had been brought in with shrapnel wounds from an IED that had killed 2 of his men. She had saved his leg, and, later, his soul. They had married 6 months later, beneath the desert stars. 3 years of happiness followed, snatched in precious moments between deployments. When Emma was born, they'd agreed that when their contracts ended, they would build a normal life. "No more war zones," Melissa had said, holding their newborn daughter. "We've given enough." Jack had already accepted a full engineering scholarship waiting for him stateside, his talent for structural design recognized by his commanders after he'd rebuilt a collapsed school in Kandahar under active fire conditions. The memory still came to him in fragments, the emergency alarm blaring across the base, the frantic sprint to the medical wing, the devastating sight of the collapsed building after the suicide bomber had detonated. Jack had dug through rubble with his bare hands for 6 hours until they found her. Melissa had pushed 3 nurses into a supply closet when the blast hit. They survived. She didn't. Her last words haunted him still. "Take care of our girl, Jack. Love her enough for both of us." He had nodded, unable to speak through his grief. That night, he had added her dog tag to his own chain. two pieces of metal clicking together like heartbeats. Jack resigned his commission the following week. The scholarship, the engineering career, the life they had planned, all abandoned. Emma needed stability, not a father disappearing into textbooks and labs. So he had become a mechanic instead, a skill learned in his youth. They moved to Austin, where no one knew their story. No one offered pitying looks or whispered, "the poor widower," when he passed. Here, they could just be Jack and Emma, finding their way together. Now, staring at the photograph, Jack wondered if he had failed her. The nightmares still came. Loud noises still sent his heart racing. Some mornings, he woke drenched in sweat, convinced he was back in the rubble, searching for Melissa. Was Principal Winters right? Was he unfit to raise their daughter alone? The systematic dismantling of Jack's life began the week after the PTA meeting. First came the letter requesting his presence at a parental evaluation, a process Principal Winters assured the school board was standard procedure for non-traditional family situations. Jack arrived to find 5 administrators seated behind a long table, their expressions clinically detached as they questioned him about Emma's home life. "Mr. Bennett, who assists with Emma's feminine development needs?" one woman asked, peering over reading glasses. "I do," Jack answered simply. "And who provides female role modeling for proper socialization?" another pressed. "I introduce Emma to accomplished women in various fields. Last month we attended a lecture by a female astronaut." The committee exchanged glances that made their skepticism clear. "Children need consistency, Mr. Bennett. A visiting astronaut hardly qualifies as maternal guidance." The following week, a representative from the school board appeared at their apartment without warning. "Home environment assessment," the woman explained curtly, brushing past Jack with a clipboard. She noted the military precision of their home with frowning disapproval, as if the cleanliness itself were suspicious. She opened cabinets, checked Emma's dresser drawers, and made notes about the concerning absence of maternal influences and rigid environmental control patterns suggesting potential psychological inflexibility. Jack stood silently, hands clasped behind his back in parade rest, a posture that now drew a notation about militaristic behavioral indicators. The playground became a battlefield of whispers. Mothers who had once smiled politely now steered their children away when Emma approached. Playdates were canceled, birthday party invitations stopped arriving. "My mom says your dad isn't like other dads," one child told Emma loudly during recess. "She says you should have a mom." The PTA meeting that month featured a special presentation on essential parenting roles in child development. Jack sat alone at the back while the speaker emphasized how children from non-traditional homes often struggle with identity formation. Heads turned subtly toward him throughout the presentation. At Emma's parent-teacher conference, her English teacher slid a drawing across the table. "Emma's artwork has taken a concerning turn," she explained. The picture showed soldiers building a school with helicopters overhead. These military themes suggest inner turmoil. "Has she been exposed to violent content at home?" "She asked about my past," Jack said quietly. "I told her I helped build schools overseas." "Mr. Bennett, young girls typically draw ponies and princesses. This suggests environmental influences that may be inappropriate for her gender development." The local church ladies appeared at their door bearing casseroles and concerned expressions. "We've heard about your situation," one explained, with honeyed sympathy. "Our congregation has several wonderful families who would be happy to provide Emma with proper maternal guidance, perhaps even on a permanent basis, if that would be best for everyone." Jack closed the door without taking the casserole. The anonymous call to Child Protective Services came next. A caseworker arrived, apologetic but firm about investigating concerns regarding emotional neglect and gender-appropriate parenting. Jack answered each question with military precision, while Emma, confused and frightened, clung to his side. When the conservative local blog ran an article titled "Is Single Fatherhood Failing Our Children?" featuring a blurry photo of Jack and Emma leaving school, regular customers began canceling appointments at the garage where he worked. His boss was understanding, but concerned. "Maybe take some time off until this blows over, Jack." People talk. With each new attack, Jack saw the toll on Emma. Her grades dropped, Nightmares had her crawling into his bed most nights, her once bright eyes now constantly scanned for threats, a child version of his own combat vigilance that broke his heart. The court date to evaluate Jack's parental fitness loomed 2 weeks away. The school counselor had already recommended more suitable placement in her preliminary report. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday. Jack found Emma sitting on her bedroom floor, surrounded by photographs of her mother that she'd never seen before. Images he kept in a locked box beneath his bed. Somehow she had found them. "Maybe they're right about us, Daddy," she whispered, tears streaming down her small face. "Maybe I do need a mom." Jack felt something crack inside him. That night, after Emma finally fell asleep, he began packing her favorite toys into a small suitcase. Perhaps the church families were right. Perhaps Emma deserved better than a broken soldier, still fighting ghosts. His hands trembled as he folded her tiny clothes, each piece of physical pain as he placed it in the suitcase. When he reached for her stuffed rabbit, the one Melissa had bought when they learned they were expecting, he found a drawing tucked beneath it. Emma's careful handwriting labeled the crayon figure, "My hero." It showed Jack in his mechanic's uniform, a bright sun overhead, and a small Emma holding his hand. Around them she had drawn a heart that encompassed them both. Jack sank to the floor, the drawing clutched in his shaking hands. He pulled the dog tags from beneath his shirt, running his thumb over the embossed letters of Melissa's name. For the first time since her death, he spoke to her aloud. "I don't know if I'm enough, Mel. I don't know if I can fight this." He reached beneath the bed and pulled out the metal box that held his past. Inside lay his silver star, combat badges, and the folded flag from Melissa's funeral. Beneath them all, the letter from his former commanding officer about the engineering scholarship, still valid if he ever reconsidered. A life abandoned for Emma's sake. His fingers found the small velvet box containing Melissa's wedding ring. "Your mother didn't die so I could give up on us," he whispered, though Emma couldn't hear. Something hardened in his chest, not the numbing ice of the past years, but the warming ember of resolve. He would not surrender their daughter to a world that judged him unfit simply because he was one parent instead of two. The courthouse loomed like a fortress on the morning of the hearing. Jack wore his only suit, slightly too large now, his frame leaner than in his military days. Emma sat beside him in the hallway, her small hand in his, dressed in her school uniform with military precision. The dark circles beneath her eyes mirrored his own. Principal Winters arrived with the school board attorney and the CPS caseworker. They moved past without acknowledgement, heels clicking importantly on the marble floor. Jack recognized the setup the moment he entered the courtroom. The strategic positioning of expert witnesses, the carefully arranged documentation, the subtle expressions of predetermined judgment. It was an ambush, just like ones he'd encountered in narrow Afghan streets. For 2 hours, Jack sat in silence as they dissected his parenting. The child psychologist who had never met Emma testified about clear attachment disruption patterns consistent with maternal deprivation. The school counselor presented Emma's declining grades as evidence of an unstable home environment. Principal Winters spoke at length about the school's grave concerns regarding Mr. Bennett's inability to provide appropriate feminine guidance. Throughout it all, Jack maintained the same steady posture, his face betraying nothing, the same expression he'd worn under enemy fire. Only the slight movement of his thumb across his knuckles, a rhythmic, self-soothing gesture, revealed the strain. When his court-assembled attorney asked if he wished to make a statement in his defense, Jack simply said, "I love my daughter. Everything I do is for her well-being." The inadequacy of those words hung in the air, too small against the mountain of expert testimony. The judge was reviewing the final recommendation, temporary placement with a suitable foster family, while Jack completed mandatory parenting classes, when the courtroom doors opened. The sharp click of boots against marble drew every eye as Colonel Sarah Martinez strode down the center aisle. Her dress uniform bore the insignia of the Special Forces, ribbons and medals in precise rows across her chest. The silver oak leaves on her shoulders caught the fluorescent light as she approached the bench. Your Honor, I request permission to provide relevant testimony in this case, she said, her voice carrying the unmistakable command presence of a senior officer. The judge blinked in surprise. And you are? Colonel Sarah Martinez, United States Army Special Forces. I've been observing this situation for the past 3 months as part of a military family welfare initiative. As murmurs spread through the courtroom, Jack stared in confusion. He had never seen this woman before. The judge granted permission and Martinez took the stand. She began by placing a thick folder on the witness stand. First, I would like to enter into evidence the complete military service record of Staff Sergeant Jack Bennett, Army Rangers, recipient of the Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor, and Purple Heart. She looked directly at Principal Winters as she continued. Staff Sergeant Bennett served 3 tours in Afghanistan. During his final tour, he was recognized for exceptional valor when he single-handedly designed and constructed emergency supports for a collapsed school building while under active enemy fire, saving 37 children and 4 teachers. Martinez opened the folder and removed several photographs. These are letters from Afghan families whose children were saved by Sergeant Bennett's actions. They describe him as the American who built schools during gunfire. The courtroom had gone completely silent. Jack sat motionless, his past suddenly laid bare before strangers. While investigating concerns about this case, I discovered several disturbing facts, Martinez continued, her voice hardening. First, Westfield Academy has targeted 7 single fathers for similar parental fitness evaluations in the past 3 years. All 7 children were eventually removed and placed with specific church-affiliated families, who then received substantial financial aid packages from the school. She produced a document. This is a financial statement showing Principal Winters receives a $10,000 family placement bonus for each successful transition. Principal Winters surged to her feet. This is slander. That money funds our scholarship program. The scholarship program that has never once accepted a child from a single-parent household? Martinez countered. We obtained a warrant to review your records after noticing the pattern. Martinez turned back to the judge. Additionally, we have evidence that Emma Bennett's academic records were deliberately altered to show declining performance. She produced a flash drive. This contains the original grade entries from her teacher's computers, showing Emma consistently performs at the top of her class, particularly in mathematics and science, subjects her father helps her with nightly. The school board attorney attempted to interject, but Martinez pressed on. Finally, we have surveillance footage showing Principal Winters instructing students to exclude Emma from activities, telling them, and I quote, "Sometimes we must be cruel to be kind. That poor girl needs a proper family." The judge's expression had transformed from bureaucratic detachment to cold anger. Martinez wasn't finished. Your Honor, Staff Sergeant Bennett lost his wife, Captain Melissa Bennett, in a suicide bombing at Bagram Airfield. She was a decorated Army surgeon who saved countless lives. Before she died, Jack promised to give their daughter a stable, normal life away from war. He surrendered a full engineering scholarship and a promising military career to become a mechanic, a job that would allow him to be present for his daughter consistently. Martinez looked directly at Principal Winters. This man didn't just serve his country. He rebuilt schools while under enemy fire so children like his daughter could learn safely. He has taken a traumatized 8-year-old girl and created a home where she feels secure enough to thrive. Until this school began its systematic campaign to destroy their family, Martinez produced one final piece of evidence, a tablet displaying video testimony from Afghan families. These are the people who know exactly what kind of man Jack Bennett is. I suggest everyone in this room listen carefully. For 5 minutes, the courtroom watched as Afghan parents described how the American soldier had taught their children engineering principles, while gunfire echoed outside. How he had created makeshift classrooms from rubble. How he had carried injured students to safety when others would have retreated. When the video ended, the silence in the courtroom was absolute. The judge took only 15 minutes to reach her decision. Full custody would remain with Jack Bennett. An investigation into Westfield Academy's practices was ordered immediately. Principal Winters and the school board would face potential criminal charges for fraud and child welfare violations. Jack accepted the ruling with a simple nod. He did not gloat or celebrate. When Principal Winters rushed past, unable to meet his eyes, he said nothing. The victory held no sweetness, only relief that the threat to his family had passed. As they left the courthouse, several parents approached awkwardly, offering halting apologies. Jack accepted them with quiet dignity, neither absolving nor condemning. For the first time since Melissa's death, he wore his dog tags outside his shirt, the twin pieces of metal catching sunlight on the courthouse steps. Colonel Martinez approached as the crowd dispersed. "Staff Sergeant." Jack straightened automatically. "Colonel, thank you for your intervention." "Don't thank me, Bennett. I'm just sorry it came to this. Your commanding officer has kept tabs on you. When he heard what was happening, he contacted me." She handed him a business card. "The engineering program at Veterans Affairs is looking for an instructor. Someone who can teach practical applications to transitioning service members. Ours would work with Emma's school schedule." Jack stared at the card. "I'm just a mechanic now, ma'am." "No, Bennett. You're an engineer who's been fixing cars. There's a difference." She glanced at Emma, who waited nearby. "Some battles aren't won with weapons, but with unwavering love. You've proven that." With a crisp nod, she departed. The following week, Emma returned to school with her head held high. Jack noticed other single parents standing taller at drop-off, meeting the gazes of those who had once judged them. Small revolutions, fought with dignity rather than anger. 1 month later, Jack accepted the teaching position. On weekends, he began taking Emma to the Veterans Center, where she proudly told other children about her father's work building schools in faraway places. She kept her mother's photograph on her desk at school now, no longer hiding their story. On the anniversary of Melissa's death, Jack and Emma visited the military cemetery in San Antonio. As they placed flowers beside the graves of fallen soldiers, Emma looked up at her father. "Mom would be proud of us, wouldn't she?" "Very proud," Jack replied, his voice steady for the first time when speaking of Melissa. They walked hand in hand through the rows of white stones, a father and daughter moving forward together, battle-tested but unbroken. In a world quick to judge what a family should look like, Jack Bennett stood as a silent reminder of an essential truth. Family isn't defined by its composition, but by the love that holds it together. If you witnessed this family struggle, would you have the courage to stand up for someone being judged unfairly, or would you be among those casting the first stone? Some battles are won not with power, but with dignity, and sometimes the greatest heroes are those fighting silent wars for the right to love their children in peace.